The release of Crimson Desert, it's almost upon us, and the response from the critics has been definitely something weird to behold, as the reviews have been all over the place, with some saying it's the greatest game ever made, while others are saying that it's terrible. Others say it's just fine. It truly does look like, honestly, that Crimson Desert's going to be the kind of game that is either going to be loved or just hated, depending on what you're looking for when it comes to games these days. If you want something small you can beat quickly, this is definitely not the game for you. Currently, as you can see here, the Metacritic is sitting at a 78. I'll be honest, I actually thought it would be higher than it is. But now that the review period is over for a lot of the review sites, a lot of people are also noticing something odd, which is that it feels as though the reviews that don't like the game coincidentally come from many places that also praise things like ideology slop games instead. As if there's like a really weird effort to make this game seem worse than it is in order to sabotage it or something. For example, right? What I found very, very interesting is that in so many reviews for Crimson Desert, many review outlets fully admitted they did not complete Crimson Desert's main plot before they scored the game, which is kind of weird, right? Look, yeah, I get it, right? The game is very long and big, we know that, but shouldn't you at least beat the main plot before scoring a game of this sizable importance? Many reviews even state they did not do all the side content. They barely fought 50% of the boss fights in the game. And in general, they barely scratched the surface, so to speak, of what this game has to offer. Yet, despite all of this, they scored the game anyways when the embargo lifted. Yet, weirdly, they did not score Marathon, for example, yet, which is by definition a much smaller game than a Crimson Desert. Because reviewers, in case you forgot, they were patiently waiting for Cryo Archive, that's an endgame activity in Marathon, to be unlocked before they could score that game proper. As seen here from Rock Paper Shotgun, Bungie asked reviewers of various websites to actually just wait until Cryo Archive released 2 weeks after the launch of that game before they scored Marathon proper, which is exactly what they did. The reviews have finally come in for Marathon, and it's a 74 out of 100 on PC, 79 so far on PS5. And why am I bringing up Marathon? In a video about Crimson Desert, you may be asking, well, it's simple. Why was Marathon given a 2-week extra buffer period of grace to stall the reviews after its release? Yet here comes Crimson Desert, a game that is utterly massive in size, and in no way could most reviewers finish it by now, but even then, they already scored that one already. It feels weirdly disingenuous to me. It's not lost on me either that Crimson is made by Asian developers, which Marathon is made by Western ones. And the industry routinely tends to not praise Asian games as often as they do in the West, but this time it feels more deliberate than usual. Look, I'm not saying outright that websites are working in tandem to ruin Crimson Desert's reputation, but it is very telling that they were not willing to, at the very least, complete the main quest before giving their final scores. I would actually love to see the completion rates of the reviewers' save files that played Crimson, which, I mean, they'll never show, we both know that, because I really wouldn't be surprised if the majority of them didn't even play a quarter of the game before hitting submit on their score and calling it a day. It does still just feel disingenuous to me, honestly. It would be like scoring a movie, but you've only seen the first 30 minutes. Like, what's the point then? Yet that's how a lot of the Crimson Desert reviews feel like to me. Not many reviews even mention what it's like to fly on a dragon or use a mech in the game at all, which to me is an obvious tell, since in trailers we've seen Cliff, that's the main character, be able to fly both of those sorts of things himself in actual gameplay. Yet the reviewers never mentioned it once in their review. Did they even reach the point in the game where they could even fly a dragon or a mech? Or did most of them not even leave the opening region before giving their final verdict anyways? Look, it's not that I care personally about review scores myself, because especially these days, a lot of review sites are so cooked when it just comes to, hiring yes men and just people who are like all believe and think the same, like who are we kidding? That it does start to become effectively pointless to listen to them for real credible takes most of the time. I mean, IGN is currently, not final, but currently they're giving Crimson Desert a 6 out of 10 in their review in progress. Yet this is the same website that gave Dragon Age Veilguard, as seen here, a 9 out of 10 somehow. I bring up the Veilguard review specifically from IGN because their review for that game is infamously bad, dude. Because the reviewer there, who scored the game, loved it because of how identity politically driven that game was, as we all know. And yet, despite the review sites all giving Veilguard glowing reviews, the user score was just abysmal, the player counts were horrible, BioWare suffered massive layoffs, and not even 6 months later, Veilguard was dumped on PlayStation Plus, which proved, yeah, it sold like dog water. Some may think I'm cherry picking here, but am I really? Why is it that some games are given all of this care and attention from these reviewers, right? Where they'll actually beat the whole game before reviewing it, or in Marathon's case, they'll just wait patiently for Bungie to release more content that was not in the base game when it first came out before giving it a final score. Yet here comes Crimson Desert, arguably the biggest game in size that we have seen in years by a landslide, and no one can dispute that. And most reviews are from people who've seen maybe 15 to 20% of what it has to offer in full, but it's too big, they'll say. Well, you should just keep playing it then. You're at the very least, you should just give it like a temporary score like IGN did, but you still keep playing it. You don't score it outright maybe because there's no way you saw everything that it had to offer. You didn't even see the final credits. Like, this entire Crimson Desert situation reminds me very much of another game that critics were all over the place for too when it came out, yet fans ended up loving it, which was Black Myth Wukong. So if you don't remember, the reviews for that game were all over the place when Wukong first released. You had reviews saying it was the best game ever, to other reviews calling Wukong just terrible and forgettable, uninspired, and not worth your time or money. Look, I played Wukong, I platinumed the game, I love that game to bits. I thought it was a weird Souls-like that had incredible art design and amazing boss fights aplenty. I genuinely thought Wukong was one of the best games I played that year when it first released. And yet if you went and looked at Wukong's Metacritic as seen here, it's sitting at an 81, which is, yes, not terrible, it's good actually. But even then, after playing it for myself, 81 is honestly far too low. I would give Wukong a 90 easily. Lies of P, for example, that's another game I loved way more than I actually thought I would, and to this day, many people believe that Lies of P is one of the best Souls-likes ever made, and yeah, I agree. It's an incredible game if you haven't played it, with like a deep combat system, and the customization, and the world, and the lore is just awesome. Yet go look at its Metacritic, 80 out of 100, just 2 points above Crimson Desert. Yet again, Lies of P is loved by Souls-like fans. And it recently crossed over, I think it was 4 million copies sold for NeoWiz, which is really big because they're not a big developer. Then of course, there was Stellar Blade, right? Another game I consider to be one of the better games I played in a long time too, and I love that game. I played it in New Game Plus immediately upon finishing it the first time. I no-liked Stellar Blade for a week straight before I 100%ed it myself. And again, look at its Metacritic score here, 81. Good, not amazing by the standards of the industry anyway, yet Stellar Blade's user score is sitting at a whopping 9.1. It also sold millions of copies, and its developer ShiftUp has raked in millions in profit due to how well that game performed for them too. So what you're noticing, right, from all the games presented here is something similar. A bunch of games all reviewed around the same frame of scoring, about maybe 0.5 points in either direction of each other really, and yet Wukong, Stellar, Lies of P, all of them, they all sold extremely well, are beloved despite not having the critical acclaim of these Western reviewers. This is why for me, when I look at Crimson Desert, I feel as though that's where the game is going to be sitting as well ultimately in the end. It's going to be like those games, the sort of game where the players, the actual paying customers who paid money to play it, are going to end up loving the game. And they're also actually going to take the time to play the game in full before scoring it themselves, unlike the reviewers did. Like for example, the Tales of games, as you can see here on Metacritic, they score similarly to many of the games I just mentioned, yet in my opinion, Tales of Berseria is like a 9 out of 10. Grace's F is like an 8.5, and Exilia is probably the only one I agree with that 8 out of 10 score with the critics. It's all very subjective, I know. Some will say, well, who cares about Metacritic? But unfortunately, a lot of people still do. Because a lot of people don't really make up their own minds about anything. Instead, they let the industry do it for them, really, which is something people really need to stop doing. Because at this point, believing in IGN about anything is kind of pointless. Because again, they gave Veilguard a 9 out of 10. How am I supposed to take what they say seriously? But like I said, unfortunately, people will look at those scores and they will care, and these scores will have real-world damage. As Video Games Chronicle reported here, after those reviews went live for Crimson Desert, their shares dropped a staggering 30% prior to the game's release, all in one day before the launch. The share price for Pearl Abyss, the company that made Crimson Desert, was sitting at $43.79 before the reviews went live. However, following the reviews coming out, the stock immediately dropped to $31.90 per share. By the time the market closed for the day in South Korea, where Pearl Abyss is located, it, their stock dropped to $30.70, meaning in total their stock dropped 29.8% in a single day, given those reviews. If you want an actual visualizer for how things have gone down, well, look at this on screen here. Around March 16th, this month, they hit a peak for shares, reviews came out, and boom, it drops off a cliff. Again, I know, this is before launch. By the time you can watch this video, the game will be officially out. I'll be sure to add to this video the initial player counts on Steam later on once those do become available. But despite all of this stock share price falling stuff, the game is still, by the way, #1 on Steam's bestsellers. This was actually confirmed by Will Powers, that's the PR manager of Crimson Desert. Currently, the game is actually #1 on every platform that it's available on. So I do think we're going to see a massive launch myself. I don't know if it's going to be Black Myth, Wukong, Elden Ring levels of a release, but I do think it's safe to say that probably 100,000 if not more players on Steam day one playing it. That's probably my bet. That's a safe one, I think. The only games that have made more money in right now in terms of dollar sales than Crimson Desert on the American PlayStation storefront are 3 games: MLB The Show 26, NBA 2K26, and Fortnite right now. So yes, that's a good sign that it is still selling like crazy prior to release. What I did notice, though, from a lot of reviews, though, were that many reviewers were complaining that the story bosses just kept annihilating them. I watched a few reviews, like Neon Knights, for example, where he flat out stated it is impossible to do the story of Crimson Desert if you don't do the side content. The game is, according to him anyways, not designed to be speedrun. I mean, I don't know how you could even do that even if you wanted to. You can't exactly brute force the story because the story has various skill checks and level requirements within them. An early boss, for example, is level 5, right? This is according to Neon Knight's review. And it took him, as he said, over 15 hours of just exploring the open world to find the gear that was required to then become strong enough to complete that story boss in the game, which is early on, mind you. I believe that this is one of the reasons why the game was likely hated by quite a few reviewers. Because not only was the game big and very demanding, but it also didn't hold their hand when it came to doing the things they usually do. And most modern games journalists are so bad when it comes to playing video games that really none of this surprises me. They probably expected God of War Ragnarok levels of hand-holding, but they got Dark Souls and Elden Ring instead. For me, that's fine. It means clearly that you can be rewarded by just playing the game and finding things. Now, is the pacing good? I guess we're going to see. But I don't think this is a game that will leave the public consciousness for a while due to just how vast it is and how long it's going to take. I do fully expect articles bashing it after its full release, though, especially if people end up loving it and pushing back against those reviews to once again, for the millionth time, claiming that the credibility of games reviewers is dog water, which I mean, that's really on them anyways. They did it to themselves. I mean, if IGN really does end up giving Crimson Desert a 6 out of 10, it's going to be a joke of a review considering, I mean, look at this, man. They actually gave Dustborn, of all things, a 7 out of 10. Dustborn, guys. A reminder, again, that this is the same IGN that gave Veilguard a 9 out of 10 and said this, which Kyle posted, and I mean here, watch this clip.
Team of interesting and endearing companions, of complex, memorable, likable, distinct personalities from across Thedas. I was very pleased with the character designs too. The armor and outfits are fabulous. I spent more than an hour in the character creator. This might be some of the best looking hair I've ever seen in a video game. As a non-binary person myself, Veilguard includes some of the most authentic representation of gender stuff, and having to navigate your family's reaction to it, it doesn't feel like an after-school special or like I'm being pandered to. Finding out that the writer for this character is non-binary themselves did not surprise me at all. If we never get another Dragon Age, at least it got to go out on a high note.
Yeah, I don't really trust IGN that much these days, and can you blame me? Not really. Game Informer also claimed that Crimson Desert has bad storytelling. A user then retweeted, as seen here, saying how was the narrative depth of Tears of the Kingdom or Elden Ring? Well, in Tears' case, it's pretty surface level too. It's basically an expansion to Breath of the Wild. Elden Ring's case, you have to admit, it's beloved because of the lore videos that do exist outside of the game's actual gameplay structure. As a game itself with nothing else around it, you can understand what goes on inside the game to a degree. But we gotta be real, the vast majority of people understand Elden Ring because of the outside lore help, which is a valid criticism. Now, I'm not going to say that Crimson Desert's story will be, this generational thing. I doubt it, but I'm also convinced that most reviews never even saw the credits before they scored it anyways. If only every game got the grace period of like a marathon, but I guess Crimson Desert isn't Western made, so that can't happen. But what the discourse around Crimson Desert shows me anyways, is something that is honestly difficult to ignore once you start seeing it. You see, the entire Metacritic thing and all that, it's not really about seeing which games succeed these days. Instead, it feels more like which games are allowed to succeed by what the journalists are saying. This is largely because the westernized game review industry has positioned themselves for years now to sort of be like the gatekeepers of what they consider to be quality above everything else. And while that might sound reasonable at first, because yeah, criticism is important, analysis is necessary, eventually the problem still shows up when that criticism stops being, for lack of a better word, consistent, I guess. So the reaction to Crimson Desert, to me anyways, it feels skeptical on purpose, even like dismissive at times. And again, comparing how the industry treated Marathon at release to Crimson Desert is a very, very good litmus test if you ask me. There was so many Cope articles, man. Give Marathon a chance. No, please, you really have to play it. Don't listen to player feedback, because we, the games journalists, love the game and you trust us, right? Yet, I don't see the same articles for Crimson Desert right now. And this is where that disconnect starts to grow, and then it becomes impossible for someone like me to ignore, because the standard across everything clearly isn't a real standard, because they judged Crimson Desert despite not knowing what it could fully achieve as like a whole complete experience. You get what I'm saying? Yet they defended Marathon on what it might eventually become before reviewing it. So the question then begins to ask, why? Why does a project like Crimson Desert face intense scrutiny before it even releases from these sorts of types, right? While other titles are just given room to recover after they've already disappointed people from the get-go. Why are ambitious, self-contained experiences like treated as risks by these reviewers? While these like sprawling monetized games that are full of like, the live service ecosystem slop that they all kind of want to be the norm right now are just, treated as investments that are worth defending with the news articles and then some. It's very, very black and white here. The answer may not be comfortable to hear for some because it suggests that the conversation around games isn't really about quality anymore, which it should be, by the way. I mean, I agree with that, but it really isn't. I mean, nowadays it's about like alignment, right? The right narratives, expectations that have been built over years of industry momentum and then some. Like Marathon wasn't accepted by the chuds, if you want to call them that, and the journalists hated that. Like, why aren't you eating it up? However, those chuds are looking forward to Crimson Desert, and if the chuds want their open world, South Korean game, well, we gotta bury it now. We gotta convince as many people as possible to not like it and buy into it day one, because the chuds might be proven right again for the 1,000th time if that ends up happening. And that's kind of how this all feels like to me, right? Like Crimson Desert is something they really don't want to exist, because it might like expose something within how they do their things, and then if that becomes like, I guess, a disruption in the status quo, they're really gonna hate that. And a reminder, right, that actually not every successful game needs to follow the same blueprint that these people like. Players can actually be interested in stuff that is complete from day one, unlike many other games these days. And when a game like a Crimson Desert exists, yeah, it's gonna create tension. And that's the last thing that the gaming reviewers and whatnot kind of need right now. Because if another game they mostly think is okay at best does amazingly well, like a Black Myth Wukong, a Stellar Blade, and more did as well. All games they also tried, by the way, to destroy with hit piece after hit piece, and they know they did. It just proves that maybe the people being tasked with ensuring the integrity of gaming journalism as a professional medium aren't exactly in this space for the right reasons. And maybe they're hoping that we're all stupid enough to not see through those cracks. Like I said, player counts will be out soon, so we'll discuss that when I can. Hey, this is Endymion in the future, so if I sound different, that's why. But anyways, Crimson Desert is now officially released. I'm playing it myself and trying to figure out what's going on exactly with this game. It's been interesting to say the least so far, but anyways, I'm here to talk about the player counts. So in this video earlier, I think I said about 100,000 day one on Steam, right? Well, as you can see right here, Crimson Desert Desert is about an hour into its full release when I'm doing this audio, and it's already crossed 233,000 players concurrently on Steam charts alone. So it already blew right past my expectations of what it would achieve day one on Steam, which is, great to see. The game likely probably already sold at least 1 million copies, I would wager, but I guess we'll see what it achieves in the days to come too. But just wanted to give this update to the video since I said that I would. But yeah, Crimson Desert is already having more players than most games combined day one. And by the way, this is only hour one of the game, so who knows where it goes from here. It just gained another actually 2,000 players on Steam as I was saying this as well. It looks like the reviews did not stop the crazy momentum one way or another. The game is probably already a hit, and that's kind of crazy, right? But it is. I guess all that doomsaying from the critics didn't have much effect on the game's sales either way. It looks like we're gonna see another Resident Evil Requiem level success on our hands, fellas. And look at that, it's single player again, made in the eastern region of the world again, and gee, it's almost as if the things I keep saying will keep happening, but there you go. But what do you think about all of this? Is Crimson Desert for you? Are you going to get it, or is it not for you? Let me know. Do the reviews make you question its quality, or do you think something stinks in the journalism sphere? Thanks for watching, subscribe if you'd like, and I'll see you guys next time.